Onondaga down below here. He said, it's not the USA, it's Onondaga. And that's what it's always been. It's small. It's free. Still free. Still leaders. These young men got a big job. I've sat in that council since, well, it's over 45 years now. And I've seen a lot of history, and I've talked to a lot of people, and as you know. But what comes to my mind now at a time like this is a time of decision. We are in global warming. It is not going to get better, it is going to get worse. And when things get worse, people have a way of falling apart or coming together. That just depends. Depends on what you have here. So prepare yourselves, all of us. I'm just talking to human beings. We're a family. We can change blood. Whether you're black or whether you're white or yellow or red or whatever color you want to talk about, you can change blood, which means you're a family. We're related. We're a species. John Mohawk said, well, he said, as far as I can see, the human species is still a biological experiment. That's where we are, folks. What's different 400 years ago and today? What's different? 7 billion people. That's what's different today. 1950, 2.5 billion people. 63 years later, 7 billion people. That's different. Who's teaching them? And my question is, how? How do you instruct 7 billion people as to their relationship to the earth? How do you do that? And that's where we're at. Because if you don't respect nature, nature's the boss. You know where we are? What's up the street here? It's big high, what? Build big high wall, right? Is it called Wall Street over here? Isn't that right here? Remember the 99 percenters that were over there? Remember them? And of course the media, which is run by corporations, said, it's too bad those kids don't know why they're there. And they're there going like this. Hey, it's your problem. And they spun it. And all of a sudden said, yeah, kids just don't know why they're there. But of course they did. And they were removed. They had to leave, remember? There's something different about those kids. You know what was different? They were your kids. They were white kids. They weren't black people. They weren't Indians. They weren't Chicanos. They were white kids, your kids, talking to you. That was different. Anyway, they moved them, because that's what they can do. And then, last October 29th, they got another visit. Who visited Wall Street October 29th? The Atlantic Ocean. 14 feet of it right over here. Couldn't remove it. You couldn't remove that. That's nature. And all of those privileged people in the penthouse, when the energy went out and shut down, the lights went out, their toilets stopped, and they had 50 floors to walk down and 50 floors to walk up and carry water and carry a slop pail. And you know what goes in a slop pail? Nature's the boss. The sooner you understand that, pay attention to that, the better off we're going to be. And if your leaders don't want to do that, then you lead the leaders. That's your job as people. You tell them. It's your life. It's your children. It's your future. You tell them. And be vocal. And get on this river with us. We're coming down. We're coming down in canoes. We're coming down in boats. Coming here. We need a place to stay for at least 3 days. Out in Lakota country said, they were coming with horses, they said. We'll follow you along the bank. Indian nations over on the West Coast said, we got canoes. 20 guys in it. I have no idea what's going to happen. But we're starting it. And it's a good idea. This is a two row. This is a covenant of peace and friendship. It's an old one. George Washington held this belt. Franklin held this belt. They all held this belt. So here we are again. And we're asking you, you're the other half. And it's you right here. And it's us right here. Here's the river of life. And we're bound together, that covenant chain. Just a reminder, Daneta. That up on the dais.
Put it over?
Yeah, right there. People, just hang it over the top.
All right.
Don't drop it.
Yahweh Haskano, chiefs, faith keepers, leaders, relatives, and distinguished guests. Last weekend, myself and the Haudenosaunee delegation, including Chief Warren Lyons, attended an international meeting. It was about the United Nations. And the delegates were from North America, North American indigenous peoples. And we were there because of the work and the vision of our leaders for decades and decades ago. Our leader, Chief Lyons, reminded us that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And that's what we have been doing. Since 1923, when a Cayuga chief by the name of Descahe traveled to Geneva, Switzerland, to the League of Nations to talk about and complain and file a complaint against the government of Canada. He was not able to enter the League of Nations, but by 1977, a delegation of indigenous peoples from the Western Hemisphere under the invitation of non-governmental organizations did enter the United Nations in Geneva under the human rights bodies and opened that door. They opened that door, and it has never been the same since. And governments will tell you that. Civil society, with the leadership of indigenous peoples, opened those doors because we knew and we wanted a seat at the table. Indigenous peoples understood that when you have exhausted all your legal remedies, where do you turn? Well, you turn to the Two Row Wampum because that has already set the standard some 400 years ago that indigenous nations treat and deal on a nation-to-nation level. In North America, we do that with the United States, and we do that with Canada. And we move that forward. We move those discussions forward. We saw two important forums open within the United Nations, so we had that seat. The Working Group on Indigenous Populations in 1982, with the leadership of the Haudenosaunee. And in 2000, the establishment of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. So here we are, some decades later, that the struggle to draft, negotiate, and complete a Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples was completed, and it was adopted by a vote inside the UN General Assembly. 144 countries voted yes, 4 countries voted no, and 11 abstained. Among those countries who said no, who have much in common with the history of indigenous peoples, were the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. But by 2010, the last holdout, the United States, acknowledged the declaration. They didn't adopt it, they didn't make it law or acknowledge it as law, but they did say that we will look at this declaration, but we will apply it under domestic law, not under international human rights law. And for them, and this was President Obama's statement in 2010, he said that what has been established under this declaration is something called a different form of the right of self-determination. We looked at each other and we asked, wait a minute, isn't that why we went to the United States in the first place? We went because we knew we were not peoples with an S. We knew we didn't have the right to self-determination or the protection of our human and collective rights. That is why we brought forward the International Human Rights Instrument called the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. If we didn't have those rights, then we will write our own declaration for our own rights. And our people did it. It was almost 20 years of negotiation and deliberation. It was the longest deliberated human rights instrument in the history of the United Nations. But we have it. Something that protects our right to self-determination, just like every other people's with an S. Protects our right to free, prior, and informed consent when it comes to the use of our lands, resources, and territories. So we have come full circle in a way that we see is very positive. Yes, we have more work to do. And that work is working with some of those developed countries who do not understand the correct interpretation of the rights of self-determination. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. About 15 years ago, Neighbors of the Onondaga Nation was birthed in Syracuse. A group of people came together recognizing that the rights of our Onondaga neighbors were not being respected, recognizing that their voice on environmental issues was being ignored. And we came together with the idea that through education, through sharing the history of relations between our peoples, that people in our community could understand that we had a debt to pay, that we hadn't lived up to the treaties which had been signed in our name, and that if we called on us to live up to the ideals that we claim as a nation, ideals of justice, of equality, of democracy, that could change. And over the last dozen years or so, things have really shifted in central New York. The Onondaga Nation has a real role to play in terms of the restoration of Onondaga Lake. People in central New York understand the history of relations with our people and want to do justice. But what we've seen is that in order to make real progress on the bigger issues, that understanding needs to be extended far beyond our own communities. It needs to be extended throughout New York State, throughout the nation, and throughout the world. So we were thinking about that and looking forward to this 400th anniversary of the Two Row Wampum Treaty. And so Neighbors of the Onondaga Nation began working with the leadership of the Onondaga Nation, with Orrin and Sid and Jake and Frida Jacques and the other clan mothers, to develop this idea of a statewide campaign to teach people about the Two Row and the promise it holds for our future, a promise of justice, of fulfilling the obligations that we've made, and a promise of creating a sustainable future for all of our peoples. That's what the Two Row Wampum Renewal campaign is all about. It's about polishing that silver chain that Orrin spoke about and called us to consider. So as part of that, we're going to be organizing educational programs such as this throughout the state. We've got a website. We're using social media, trying to be on top of all of the new developments, the ways of sharing information with people through YouTube, et cetera. And then a centerpiece of the campaign is to try to bring the Two Row to life, to travel together down the Hudson River, as Orrin spoke of briefly, and you saw the video at the beginning, our movie trailer. So on July 28th, a group of people will put boats in the water in Albany, New York, and travel over 13 days side by side, a row of paddlers from the Haudenosaunee and other native peoples, paddling side by side with a row of non-native allies, traveling for 13 days, stopping for educational and cultural events, trying to talk to people all along the way about the concerns that Orrin spoke of, the concerns about social justice, about fulfilling our commitments, and the concerns about the earth. A major part of that will be continuing to raise the question of hydrofracking and to insist that New York State not allow this very dangerous and destructive practice here. It's been very heartening to us as we've gone around the state to see the response like this, rooms full of people just eager to hear the words of the Haudenosaunee leaders, eager for the message of environmental responsibility, of living together in peace and friendship. So that there's active organizing committees here in New York, in the Capital District, the Hudson Valley, Ithaca. Tanya's playing a major leadership role here in New York. But there's much more to be done. So the Onondaga and Noon are working together in leadership of the project. There's over 70 educational institutions with Syracuse University being the most prominent and strongest among them. Faith communities, social justice, and environmental groups working with us. There's lots more people needed, lots more ways to help build this. There's information outside. There's a number of us involved with the campaign here, both people associated with Noon as well as folks from Onondaga and other Haudenosaunee nations. We encourage you to talk to us afterwards if you're interested in getting involved, to take the literature, to sign up to get more information. So there's tremendous progress. We need more people power. We also need more financial resources to make it successful. So if you'd like to help us with any of those, please talk to us afterwards. Thank you for coming, and we look forward to working together to renew the Two Row Wampum, to honor Native treaties, and protect the earth. Thank you.
Well, join with me in thanking our panel one last time, please. Thank you all for coming. The flute player, Rob Benedict, will be playing for us at the end here, and you can greet our panelists if you wish. All right? Thank you.
Wonderful. Great that the short, punchy people at the end.
Okay.